It's 104.9 Coyote Country. Robert Miguel here with you. Time for our favorite time of the week, Fanboy Fridays. And with me on the phone as always, professional Q&A moderator and speaker, film critic at BigFanboy.com, show director at Dallas Comic Show. Once again, give it up for Mr. Mark Walters. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, Robert. It's good to be back. Sorry we missed last week. I think we were all in kind of a turkey coma, weren't we?
Exactly. Oh, man, what a great time it is for Thanksgiving. But yeah, I did miss talking to you, so it's good to have you back on the show. How was your Thanksgiving holiday?
Mine was very, very low-key. I have a very small family, so I just went with my mom to Luby's cafeteria, and we actually we got there towards the end of the day, so a lot of the food was kind of picked over, and the turkey that I got wasn't very good, but I went back and swapped it out with some ham, and they hooked it up, man. They really loaded up our plates well, so we were very happy. It was a low key Thanksgiving, but we didn't do any cooking or anything, but we enjoyed it. We had a good time.
You had a low key Thanksgiving. A little Thor there.
Yes, a low key Thanksgiving. Yes, in the honor of Thor.
Sorry, I had to do it. It wouldn't be me if it wasn't a bad pun. So mine was actually really fun. I had some family over. I spent entirely too much time in the kitchen. I'm kind of one of those guys. I like to cook. So I was shuffling a ham and a turkey in one small oven, and it was.
Man, you are a glutton for punishment. My God.
I was a glutton for a lot that day. So yeah, it was a good time though. I had some family over and went and got to see. Oh my goodness, dude! I saw Coco, and wow, how about the feels on that one? Whew.
I got to tell you, I've missed they did an advanced screening of it, and I sent one of my writers to it, and then on a whim, I went and saw it last weekend because I was just curious, and you're not kidding, man. I was sitting there with a friend of mine, two grown dudes sitting next to each other, and I was passing them a napkin because we were bawling our eyes out because I just could not get over how emotional that film was. There's a moment towards the end of that movie where if you don't cry, you have no soul. It is just so powerful. After it was over, I went and I looked up. The director of that movie is Lee Unkrich, and I was curious. I was like, okay, well, let's see what other Pixar movie this guy was responsible for. His first Pixar movie was Toy Story 2, and I immediately thought of that Jessie song in Toy Story 2, which is another one of those scenes that just makes you bawl your eyes out.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, these guys at Pixar, they're just sitting there wringing their hands like going, oh, man, they're going to cry at this one.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I'm so relieved that you admitted to that because I'm sitting there next to my 11-year-old daughter, and I swear to God, I'm feeling more feels than she is. These kids are so just... I don't know, but it was such a great movie. I'm so sorry we didn't get a chance to actually talk about this on the feature because it's just such a great... I cannot go on and on.
Well, listen, that's one of the reasons that doing this segment is great is because you can fill people in on something that they might have missed, too.
Yeah.
And this was a film that I think that... You touch upon something that I think is really important, and that is, this is a movie that will get you as an adult because there's a lot of things in it that I think we can all... in some way relate to, especially when it comes to family and losing people that you really love and care about, and just kind of the passage of time and how it affects us as a family unit and whatnot. And everybody, obviously there's a lot of very heavy cultural themes in Coco, and some people might say, well, that seems like it's geared more towards Hispanic audiences and whatnot. And I can honestly say that this is a film that I think everybody will in some way identify with. They will find something in this movie that will speak to them and that will speak to things that they can relate to. I really hope people make an effort to see this movie because I think it is, first of all, I think outside of everything else, I think it's a beautiful movie.
It really is.
Absolutely beautiful what they've put together for this film. Oddly enough, my only complaint about the film has nothing to do with the film itself, and that is the Frozen short that comes before the movie. I mean, if you like Frozen, it's fun, but man, that short just it drags. It goes on and on and on. It's like over 20 minutes, and it really overstays its welcome. I found myself halfway through it thinking, okay, can we just get to Coco? I was there to see Coco. I didn't really care about the short film before it. And I don't think I've ever felt that way in a Pixar film. Usually I look forward to seeing the short films that intro it, but this was one of the few times where I was kind of like, I was a little put off by the short film before. But yeah, just getting back to what we were discussing. I mean, Coco is it's so good. It's
Absolutely.
So good. I really hope people make an effort to see this movie because it's really, really good.
If you haven't seen it, you got to get out and see it immediately. Okay, so let's talk about what's going on. I know there's a couple of films coming out here on December 22nd that you've already seen advanced screenings for. So let's start off with the movie Downsizing.
Now, this is a film by Alexander Payne, and if you haven't seen the trailers for it, it's a very interesting concept because the concept basically, in a weird way, the first sort of 30 minutes or so of the film, it almost feels kind of like a quirky Mike Judge idea because the concept is that in the wake of population explosion and the fact that there's so many people on the planet and there's just not enough places to put them, these people in Norway come up with this technology that allows them to shrink somebody down to I'm trying to remember the exact size, but basically they're like, about the size of like an action figure. And so they can shrink a person down to like the size of an action figure. And as a result of this, they also can build all these like little tiny houses and tiny cars and tiny things that they can use so that, if people allow themselves to be shrunk down, they can still live a normal life. It's not like they're having to live weirdly or anything like that. They have, specific places they could go to live. And also it deals with it's so intricate in terms of all the little things that it covers because it says like, well, by downsizing, you not only allow yourself to live an easier life, but the money that you make, like if you make $50,000 in a year, if you have $100,000 saved up, it translates to like millions of dollars in this downsized life.
Right.
So it deals with like kind of the economics of it and things like that. And it's a very interesting concept. In fact, in some ways, I remember thinking to myself, if this was real, if this actually did exist, I think that it would be kind of a viable option for dealing with, population control and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Of course, there are certain questions you would have to ask yourself, like how do you deal with like insects or birds or things like that, and they do address that a little bit in the movie. Like there's a couple of moments where, somebody says something about it and they say, well, this is what we do and whatnot. So, I mean, they do at least kind of hint towards that. But what's most interesting about this film, it stars Matt Damon and Kristen Wiig. They play a couple who decides to downsize. What's probably the most surprising about it is that once they get past like the first 30 to 45 minutes of story, which involves the downsizing aspect.
Like all the science, right?
It's into a much different movie. It turns into kind of a bit of a social commentary. Like, just because you can downsize yourself and live like a king because your money translates into much more, what would you feel no responsibility to live a certain way? And it kind of gets into a bit of a social commentary, which I think some people might find that a little bit off-putting. I know there's people that I talked to that said that they thought it was a little overly preachy. And honestly, I wasn't quite expecting the material to go there, so I was a little bit, I don't want to say upset with it, but it just wasn't the kind of movie I thought I was going to see. So I'll be very interested to see how people react to it. And the running time was a little bit long. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes. I'm usually a big fan of Alexander Payne. Alexander Payne is the guy that did Nebraska with Bruce Stern and Sideways with Paul Giamatti. He's done some really cool films and some really quirky kind of comedies that are good character studies. And there certainly is some good stuff in this, but I have a feeling this is probably not going to be one of his more successful ventures. I think there's going to be a lot of division in people when they see this in terms of what they think about it. So, but it's an interesting concept. I would suggest that people at least check it out, see what they think for themselves. And like you said, that comes out later in December. And then the other movie that we saw was The Post, which is a Steven Spielberg movie.
Everybody's excited about this one, right?
Yeah, Steven Spielberg directed this, and this is based on an event that happened back in the early 70s where when Nixon was in the White House and there was a lot of propaganda that was coming out about the Vietnam War, at the time, the Washington Post was considered kind of just like a local paper. It wasn't really like this big national, journalist production that we know now.
Right.
And so what was going on was the New York Times had gotten a hold of some classified documents that were exposing a lot of these things that were happening within the Vietnam War that the government did not want people to know about. And so the New York Times was, they kept printing all this stuff, and the White House was getting angrier and angrier about it. And so what Nixon finally decided to do was he basically had the White House throw down as a stipulation or a penalty on the New York Post to say they could no longer publish classified documents because it was considered a breach of national security. And so then the Washington Post ends up getting a hold of these same documents, and they find themselves in a position where it's like, okay, we know that the other paper got shut down for doing this. So if we publish this, we could potentially get shut down. We could potentially go to jail. The entire paper could get shut down for publishing this. But at the same time, it was one of those things where it's like, the American people deserve to know this information. They deserve to know what's been going on and what's being covered up. So they had to make this very important decision on whether or not to publish these documents, and it really sort of redefined what journalism was at the time, and what the newspapers how they were looked at or how they were respected at the time and whatnot. The film stars Meryl Streep as Katharine Graham, who is the owner of the Washington Post. She became the owner because her husband, her father owned the newspaper. She got married. Her father gave the newspaper to her husband to run, but then her husband passed away. So she found herself very suddenly being in charge of this giant newspaper company, and she didn't really know anything about running a newspaper. So Meryl Streep plays that role in this movie, and Tom Hanks plays the editor of the paper. And it's also interesting that they shot this and produced it and finished it, I think, inside of like 6 months or something. It was a crazy breakneck schedule that they shot this movie and tried to get it done, because I know they just started shooting it earlier this year. So it's actually really impressive that they finished it and they're managing to get it out in time for audiences to see it in December. And I think it's also important to point out that this is a movie that I know it's got a limited release in December 22nd, but I think it doesn't actually go wide until January. So it's entirely possible, if you're listening to this, that you may not see it until another month or so.
Oh, wow, okay.
But keep it on your radar. This will be a big talking point movie. This will be a movie that a lot of people will be discussing once it hits. And I do think it's a very strong qualifier for the Oscar run as well. I don't know if this is a movie. I don't think it's the kind of film that Meryl Streep, I don't think she's going to end up getting a lot of Oscar nods for it, because the role is a very kind of subdued role. It's not a typical, powerhouse Meryl Streep role, but nonetheless a very important figure in history.
From what I've seen so far in the trailers and just what I've read, it's reminding me of that movie Spotlight that came out a couple of years back.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison.
Okay.
Although I dare say Spotlight is probably a more powerful movie. I think The Post is one of those films that, in the grand scheme of things, in the scheme of history, it's a very important story. It's a very important moment in journalistic history. But I think Spotlight it kind of feels like a more powerful movie because it deals with more controversial.
Right.
Oh God, I don't know the right way to say this, but maybe controversial human aspect.
It's also a much sensitive, very sensitive nature.
Child molestation and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was something that was more sensitive to people, and it became more powerful as a result of that. This movie that is a very good comparison, but I think this is a very different type of movie in the sense that it plays more kind of almost more like a political thriller, in a very subdued way. So, but that's a great that actually is like probably one of the smartest. Good on you, Robert.
Hey, all right, look at me.
That's like one of the smartest comparisons, the smartest movie to compare it to in recent years.
And I haven't even seen it yet, so there you go. But again, that's The Post coming out December 22nd in limited release, and then in wide release January 12th. So you've either seen or you've posted the new Avengers trailer. Is that right?
Yes, the new Avengers trailer, Avengers Infinity War. We posted the trailer this week. You can watch it at bigfanboy.com. And this is the trailer of the week. This is the trailer that everybody's talking about right now. And this is the film that they've been building to ever since they started these Marvel movies back in 2008. They built up the team of the Avengers. They've been teasing Thanos as the big villain, the big bad, and now we're finally going to get to see all the Marvel heroes going up against this mad cosmic titan, Thanos. The big controversy about this movie, the thing that everybody's wondering about, is it's already sort of been hinted at, or I guess you could even say revealed, that some of these heroes are going to die.
Oh no!
They're not going to. They're going to die, and they're not going to come back.
Oh.
And so we know that. We know that we're going to lose some of these guys in this movie, and that's the big question now. Is like, okay, who's going to bite the big one in Infinity War? You know, like who's going to be the one that doesn't come back? And it's going to be multiple heroes. It's not just going to be one. I think we're going to lose multiple heroes in the film. So
wow,
it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, just so you know, Robert. Thanos is my favorite Marvel villain.
Oh.
I'm particularly excited about this film because I'm really anxious to see how they're going to end up portraying him on the big screen. I think it's going to be a huge, huge epic event. This comes out May of next year, and this will definitely be the film everybody's talking about. In between now and then, we also get Marvel's Black Panther, which comes out, I believe, in February, and that's going to play a direct role in this film in terms of not only, you know, introducing the character of Black Panther and whatnot, but a direct lead-in into Infinity War. So Marvel is just totally dominating the box office.
Yeah.
And with Thor Ragnarok and then Black Panther coming up and now Infinity War, you're going to see a lot of Marvel hype in the movie theaters for the next year or so.
Well, we're excited about that. Infinity War does come out on May the 4th. And, what else you got on BigFanboy.com? Any new content, any new reviews or trailers you need to brag about?
Yeah, you can look for the trailer for Jurassic World 2, Fallen Kingdom. We're going to be talking a little bit more about Infinity War as well, because we're actually going to be posting an article which will run through the weekend that kind of tells people what to expect from it, especially if they're not familiar with the source material. So be on the lookout for that article. And I've got a really fun article that I'm going to be posting, I believe also that runs through this weekend that I think people are going to love, and it's about food in movies. So, like, if you've ever seen a movie where there was a scene in the movie where someone was eating something and you thought, man, that looks tasty, we're going to have an article about that. We're going to go down, like, kind of the top 20 moments in movies where, you know, we saw some food that we thought was really mouth-watering. So
now,
be on
hold
the
on.
lookout for that. That's going to be a fun piece.
What about the claymation burger in Better Off Dead? That's got to be in there, right?
Did you really find that appetizing?
So it's strictly appetizing. Well, no, but when I think food in movies, I automatically go to a burger playing "Everybody Wants Some" from Van Halen on Better Off Dead.
I'll give you one that I think everybody can do, because everybody at some point or another will remember or reference, and that is in Pulp Fiction when Samuel L. Jackson and Jewel takes a bite out of that big Kahuna burger. And I don't care if you're even the kind of person that doesn't like hamburgers. That hamburger looked really, really tasty in that scene. There's just something about the way they shoot food in movies, and not every movie can pull it off. I mean, we've certainly seen movies where it just didn't work. There's something about the way they shoot food in movies where sometimes you're sitting there watching it and you're thinking, man, I wish I had one of those right now.
All right, well, Mark, thanks again for checking in. We do appreciate all your input as always. Everybody go visit www.bigfanboy.com for all the latest and greatest on what they've got going on over there in Big D. Once again, let's give it up to professional Q&A moderator and speaker, film critic at bigfanboy.com, and show director at the Dallas Comic Show, Mr. Mark Walters. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you, Robert. And again, everybody check out Coco. It's amazing.
It's 104.9 Coyote Country. Robert, Miguel.